I can still see the room filled with pink balloons, the delicate finger sandwiches arranged perfectly on grandmother's china, and the soft pastel streamers hanging from the ceiling. It was supposed to be my baby shower, a celebration of the new life growing inside me. But when my mother-in-law Eleanor stood up, champagne flute in hand, I felt the air shift. "Everyone, I'd like to thank you all for coming to celebrate my grandbaby," she announced with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then she locked gazes with me across the table. "I have some simple instructions. Don't hand her anything directly. She's just the incubator. Everything for the baby should come to me or be placed on the gift table." The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes darted between us, then quickly averted when they met mine. I felt the color drain from my face, my fingers trembling around my glass of sparkling water. Did she really just call me an incubator? In my own home? At my own shower? I looked down at my 7-month pregnant belly, smoothing my hand over the blue dress I'd spent weeks finding. I'd wanted to look perfect today. Instead, I felt invisible. My sister-in-law awkwardly passed the gift she'd been about to hand me to Eleanor instead, who smiled triumphantly. I stayed silent, gripping my glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Then from the corner of the room, a small figure stood up. My 7-year-old daughter Emma, her hair in neat braids I'd done this morning, pushed back her chair with determination. What happened next made the whole table freeze. Eleanor had made it clear from the day Mark proposed that I wasn't what she had envisioned for her only son. A real estate agent wasn't good enough for her surgeon son. She'd wanted someone from their country club circle, preferably the judge's daughter she'd been pushing him towards since high school. Mark had always been caught in the middle, torn between the mother who sacrificed everything to put him through medical school and the woman he chose to love. Whenever Eleanor overstepped, which was constantly, he'd sigh and say, "That's just mom being mom. She means well." The baby shower had been Eleanor's idea. "Let me handle everything," she'd insisted. "You're so busy with work and little Emma and in your condition." She'd insisted on hosting it at our house, but took over completely choosing the guest list, the food, the decorations. I wasn't even consulted on who to invite. My own mother had passed 3 years ago, and my sister lived across the country and couldn't make it. The room was filled with Eleanor's friends, distant relatives I barely knew, and Mark's colleagues' wives. Mark had been called into emergency surgery that morning. "I'm so sorry, babe," he'd said, kissing my forehead. "Mom will take good care of you." If only he knew how wrong he was. As I sat there, the incubator comment still ringing in my ears, I noticed how everyone seemed to be acting according to Eleanor's direction. Gifts were being opened by her, food was being directed away from me, and conversations deliberately excluded me. I wasn't a person to them anymore. I was just a vessel, carrying Eleanor's precious grandchild. "Oh, and Jennifer makes the most delicious lasagna, doesn't she?" Eleanor gushed to her friend, sitting directly across from me as if I were invisible. "I've already told her she'll need to make it for us after my granddaughter arrives. Heaven knows this one can't cook to save her life." The women tittered politely. I felt heat creep up my neck. I'd graduated culinary school before switching to real estate. Mark said my bolognese was the best he'd ever tasted. And the nursery, well, I've completely redone it. The theme Caroline picked was just so impractical. Jungle animals? For a little girl? I've changed it to proper pink princesses, of course. I nearly choked. I hadn't even known she'd been in the nursery. Mark and I had spent weekends painting the mural together, with Emma helping with the smaller details. It was perfect, not too gendered, educational, something our daughter could grow with. "Oh, and the name they've picked," Eleanor shook her head dramatically. "Well, I'm working on changing their minds. A baby should be named after family, not some random name they found online." We'd chosen to name the baby Lily, after my mother. As the party progressed, I became more and more invisible. When I stood to use the bathroom, No one moved to help me up despite my obvious struggle. When I returned, my seat had been taken by Eleanor's neighbor, who was showing ultrasound photos I'd sent to Eleanor in confidence. "Look how she's positioned just like Mark was," Eleanor cooed. "Doctor says she's going to be tall like him. Thank goodness she's taking after our side." I stood there, hovering at the edge of my own baby shower, fighting back tears. I caught Emma watching me from the kids' table, her little brow furrowed. I tried to smile reassuringly, but my lips trembled. When it came time for cake, Eleanor announced it was dairy-free since Caroline developed that convenient lactose intolerance during this pregnancy. The way she emphasized convenient made it clear she thought I was faking the painful condition that had developed in my second trimester. The cake was placed in front of Eleanor, not me. She made a show of cutting the first piece and passing it down the table away from where I sat. "Before we serve everyone," Eleanor continued, "I'd like to share some exciting news. Mark and I have been discussing the baby's christening, and we've decided on St. John's Episcopal where Mark was christened. I've already spoken with Reverend Williams and secured May 15th. My hands began to shake. Mark and I weren't even religious. We'd already decided against a christening. This was the first I'd heard of any such plans. And on the subject of traditions, Eleanor continued, gaining momentum, "I think it's time we discussed summer plans. I've taken the liberty of booking the lake house for the whole month of July. Emma could use some structure in her summer activities. Last year, Caroline let her run absolutely wild with that art camp nonsense. This year, she'll attend proper swimming lessons and junior etiquette classes." From across the room, I saw Emma's back straighten. Her eyes narrowed so like her father's when he was upset. "It's for the best," Eleanor concluded, looking directly at me. "Some people just aren't natural mothers. Emma needs proper guidance, and this new baby will need it too." That's when Emma stood. Her small chair scraped against the hardwood floor, creating a harsh sound that cut through the murmured agreements. Every head turned toward my daughter, her pink dress matching the balloons, her expression suddenly years older than her 7 years. "My mommy is not an incubator," she said, her voice high but unwavering. "And she is the best mommy in the whole wide world." As Emma stood there, defiant and strong, my mind flashed back to the pattern that had led us here. The first time I realized what I was up against was at our wedding. Eleanor had surprised us by changing the flower arrangements I'd carefully selected to ones she preferred. "Just a little improvement," she'd said when I discovered them. Then came Emma's birth. Eleanor had somehow convinced the hospital staff she had permission to be in the delivery room. While I was at my most vulnerable, she stood over me, criticizing my breathing techniques, telling the doctor her son wouldn't want certain procedures done. Mark had been too overwhelmed to notice how she'd undermined me during the most important moment of my life. The most painful memory was from 2 years ago. I'd suffered a miscarriage at 11 weeks. While I was still bleeding, still grieving, Eleanor had cornered me at a family dinner. "Perhaps this is for the best," she'd whispered. "You've been so busy with your little job. And one child is enough for someone like you to handle. Someone like me." The words had cut deeper than she knew. After each incident, I'd tried to talk to Mark. "She doesn't mean it that way," he'd say, or "You're just hormonal right now," or "Can you try a little harder?" For me, I'd swallowed my pride so many times that I'd forgotten the taste of dignity. I'd smiled through the insults, accepted the backhanded compliments, allowed her to redecorate parts of our home when she visited. All because I loved Mark, and Mark loved his mother. Now, watching my daughter stand up to the woman I'd never had the courage to confront, I felt shame wash over me. What example had I been setting? What was I teaching Emma about self-respect? As the room's attention focused on Emma, a memory surfaced, my mother's voice, clear as day. It was something she'd told me shortly before cancer took her from us. "Caroline," she'd said, holding my hand in her fragile one, Remember that you are not just someone's wife, someone's daughter-in-law, or even someone's mother. You are a complete person, worthy of respect simply because you exist. I'd forgotten her words, buried them under years of trying to be the perfect wife, the accommodating daughter-in-law, the mother who never made waves. But watching Emma, this fierce little person who shared my blood, I felt something awakening inside me. My mother had raised me to be strong, but somewhere along the way, I'd lost myself. What would she think of me now, sitting silently while being humiliated at my own baby shower? What would she think of her granddaughter having to fight battles I was too cowardly to face? The baby kicked inside me, a sharp jab that felt like agreement. This child deserved a mother who could stand up for herself. Emma deserved a mother she could be proud of, not one who showed her that love meant accepting mistreatment. In that moment, I saw the future stretching before us, years of Eleanor controlling our lives, undermining my parenting, teaching my daughters that their worth was determined by others. Unless I changed something now. As Emma stood there, small but mighty, I felt strength flowing from her to me. For the first time in years, I remembered who I was before I became so afraid of rocking the boat. I straightened my spine and prepared to support my daughter. Grandma Eleanor said Mommy doesn't know how to be a good mom, Emma continued, her voice getting stronger. I heard her on the phone telling her friend that Mommy is just a carrier pigeon delivering her grandbaby. Gasps rippled through the room. Eleanor's face flushed crimson. Emma, darling, you must have misheard, she began, but Emma wasn't finished. You said Daddy only married Mommy because she trapped him with me. You said that when I wasn't listening, but I was. Emma's eyes were filling with tears now, but she blinked them back fiercely. And you changed the baby's name in the book. What book, sweetie? I asked, finding my voice at last. The baby name book in the nursery. Grandma crossed out Lily and wrote Elizabeth with a big marker. She said Lily was a stripper name and Elizabeth is a proper lady's name. The room went deadly silent. My mother's name defaced. The nursery we'd lovingly prepared invaded and altered. And that's not all. Emma was on a roll now, all her pent-up observations pouring out. Grandma has a key to our house she's not supposed to have. She comes when we're not home and moves things around. She told Mrs. Peterson next door to watch what Mommy does and tell her if men visit when Daddy is working. Eleanor stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. That is enough. Children should be seen and not heard. This is what happens when you don't discipline properly, Caroline. This disrespect. Is she lying, Eleanor? I asked quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. Of course she is. The imagination on this child. Emma reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a small pink device. It's all on my kid's recorder. The one Santa brought me. She pressed a button, and Eleanor's unmistakable voice filled the room. Caroline is just an incubator. Once this baby is born, we'll finally be able to fix all the mistakes she made with Emma. The silence that followed was deafening. 20 women sat motionless, shock evident on their faces. Even Eleanor seemed stunned into silence, her perfectly manicured hand frozen midair. I stood up slowly, one hand supporting my pregnant belly, and walked over to my daughter. I placed my hands on her small shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. Emma, I said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear, thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth. I turned to face the room, keeping one arm around my daughter. I've spent 4 years trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law, accepting treatment no one should accept. I've let things slide for the sake of peace, thinking it was best for my family. Today, I see that was a mistake. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mark. I answered it on speaker. Hey babe, surgery finished early. How's the shower going? His cheerful voice echoed in the silent room. Daddy, Emma called out. Grandma called Mommy an incubator and said she's not a real mom. She, what? Mark's voice changed instantly. Put my mother on the phone. Mark, darling, Emma misunderstood. I heard the recording, Mom. I cut in. Emma has it all on her kid's recorder, including your plans for the christening we never discussed, your criticism of my parenting, and how you've been coming into our home without permission. There was a pause. Then Mark's voice, cold in a way I'd never heard before. Mom, I'm coming home right now. And when I get there, we're going to have a long overdue conversation about boundaries. As I ended the call, I felt a strange lightness. Years of walking on eggshells, of doubting myself, began to lift. I looked around the room at these women who had witnessed my humiliation and done nothing. But instead of shame, I felt pity. How many of them lived similar lives of quiet desperation? The baby shower is over, I announced. Thank you all for coming. Eleanor couldn't leave quietly. She never could. After everything I've done for this family, she hissed, grabbing her purse. Mark would be nothing without me. This house, your lifestyle, all because of the sacrifices I made. And this is the thanks I get. I met her gaze steadily. The only thing I'm thankful for today is that my daughter showed me what courage looks like. You've been undermining me since the day I met Mark. You've criticized my cooking, my parenting, my career, my appearance. You've made me feel like an outsider in my own family. That ends today. You can't keep me from my son and grandchildren. Her voice rose sharply. No, I can't. But I can establish boundaries about how you'll treat me and my children if you want to be in our lives. No more surprise visits. No more rearranging our home. No more undermining my parenting decisions. Eleanor looked around the room for support, but found none. Several guests were already gathering their things, embarrassed to witness this family meltdown. A few looked at me with newfound respect. Then something unexpected happened. Mark's Aunt Patricia, Eleanor's own sister, stood up. Ellie, that's enough, she said firmly. I've watched you do this for years. First to Mark's college girlfriends, then to Caroline. You're going to lose your son if you don't stop. Patty, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You think no woman is good enough for your son. But look at what you've done. You've forced your own granddaughter to defend her mother because you couldn't be decent. The front door opened and Mark appeared, still in surgical scrubs. He took in the scene, his mother red-faced and defensive, me standing with Emma, the awkward guests. Everyone except my wife, daughter, and mother, please excuse us, he said with quiet authority. As the guests filed out, some murmuring apologies to me, Mark walked over and put his arm around me. For the first time in our marriage, there was no hesitation, no attempt to mediate. He had chosen his side. I heard the recording in the car, Mark said once we were alone. Emma sent it to me through your phone. Eleanor's face crumpled. Mark, you can't possibly believe. Stop. His voice was firm. I've made excuses for you for years, Mom. I've let you overstep because I thought it was easier than confronting you. That was my mistake, and Caroline and Emma have paid the price. He knelt down in front of me, taking both my hands. I am so sorry. I should have protected you. Both of you. He placed a gentle hand on my belly. All three of you. Eleanor sank into a chair, her composure finally breaking. You're choosing her over your own mother? This isn't about choosing, Mark replied. This is about respect. Caroline is my wife, the mother of my children, and an incredible woman in her own right. She deserves your respect. He turned back to me. I want you to know that I've heard everything. About the nursery, about the secret key, about all of it. It stops now. The doorbell rang unexpectedly. Emma ran to answer it and returned with my sister Kate, who had apparently caught an emergency flight when I texted her about the baby shower. Surprise, Kate said, taking in the scene with a raised eyebrow. Looks like I arrived just in time for the after-party? The tension broke. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again as Kate hugged me fiercely. Mark explained the situation briefly while Eleanor sat in stunned silence. Well, Kate said, rolling up her sleeves metaphorically. Let's clear this mess and have a real celebration. My niece deserves it, and so does my sister. The remaining guests, those who had lingered outside out of concern, were invited back in. This time, I sat at the head of the table, with Mark beside me, Emma proudly helping serve cake. Eleanor had quietly left during the commotion, taking her hurtful words with her. What had begun as a day of humiliation had transformed into something powerful. As I looked around at the genuine smiles, at Mark's protective hand on my shoulder, at Emma's beaming face, I felt the baby kick harder than ever before. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Emma was tucked in bed, I sat in the rocking chair in the nursery, our jungle-themed nursery that Mark promised would remain exactly as we'd designed it. My hand rested on my belly, feeling the active movements of our daughter. "Your big sister saved us today," I whispered to my unborn child. "She showed me what courage looks like, what self-respect feels like." Mark knelt beside the chair, his hand joining mine. "Our daughters will never doubt their worth," he promised. "They'll never stay silent when they should speak. And they'll always know their mother is the strongest woman I know." The next morning, Emma climbed into our bed, her small hand resting protectively on my belly. "Baby Lily kicked me," she exclaimed with delight. "She knows her fierce protector," I said, hugging her close. "I'm not just her protector," Emma said with surprising wisdom. "I'm her teacher too. I'll teach her to be brave like us." And in that moment, I understood the real gift of motherhood. It wasn't just about what I could teach my daughters, but what they would teach me. Strength, courage, and dignity weren't just traits I needed to model, they were legacies passed between generations of women, flowing both ways. "We are not vessels," I whispered, feeling whole for the first time in years. "We are the current in a river that runs both ways."